This video is totally, completely on time for my celebration of 100 followers! Woo! Don't look at any receipts. I didn't take ages to do this. Now, my setup is kinda scuff because I don't have a ring light or one of those camera arms you use to actually hold a camera, or really any tool you would use to smooth out clay, which is why you'll see I'm using a ruler to shape the air-dry clay on the mask into place with, some success. When doing the molding, I started out with the eyes and the smile, with the original plan to do that, then stop for the night so it could dry before I work on the rest. But by the time the eyes and the mouth were done, I was committed and started on the cheeks and crescent shape of the face. I kept the layer somewhat thin and used a tiny bit of water to smooth together the chunks as I put them onto the cardboard. Through this section, I was a bit worried the clay wouldn't stick to the cardboard, but it was surprisingly easy to mold the two together, no problem. Once everything was put together, I used my fingers to texture and dent the crescent part to give the mask a more textured look, similar to how a moon's craters would be. I let the clay dry overnight, and then it was on to painting. I started out with the largest part first, as I knew it would take the longest to finish, but hopefully would dry quicker than the cardboard, as I would need to use that area to hold the mask steady when doing the smaller sections. The yellow started out with a mix of orange, yellow, and white, but when it was done, I felt it looked a little bit too bright. So I mixed a bit more orange and white to make a lighter coat I could brush over top to give it a powderier look, before darkening the paint with the bit more orange to add some to the edges. Once that dried, I mixed a darker orange and yellow paint for the other portion of the mask, and painted over it with extra focus on the cardboard, as the paint did not stick as well on there as it did to the clay. I was careful around the edges of the section to avoid painting over the edges of the crescent, so it wouldn't have to be repainted. After that part was done, I started working on the white eyes and mouth of the mask, while the clay was white to begin with. Through the painting process, there were a few spots where the yellow got onto the rims of those parts, so I did my best to find and paint over those spots for a less messy look. Once the mask was painted and drying, I switched over to the sun rays, running a quick coat of the same paint I used for the darker yellow to the lower half of the rays, repeating the process on both sides, before blending a somewhat lighter yellow in attempts to make a gradient to the tips. I let everything dry and poked a couple of holes with a screwdriver because it's time to put it all together. I used a rubber string to attach the spinnable internal component to the back part of the mask with some difficulty, gluing the string down to keep it from coming loose. I let the glue dry, then started tying small pieces of the rubber string to one of the corners of the rays before pulling it through another hole to the back of the mask, gluing it and repeating that process another 8 times off camera because this part was frustrating and time-consuming in a way that would probably add at least 5 minutes to this video. After attaching them all, I then glued small torsion springs to the back of the mask and the rays, and started tying the rubber string to the opposite side of the rays and gluing them to the cylinder in the middle. This was another part of the process that was tedious, so this was also done mostly off camera to save your sanity. Now that the closing system was fully finished, I attached the top piece of the middle over the cylinder and switched my attention to the front of the mask. I grabbed a smooth rock and glued it to the bottom of the mask to act as a weight, then glued the top of the mask to the center of the mask to finish it off. And there we go! I now have a somewhat functional decorative mask that totally caused me no problems when closing it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for 100 subscribers. If you have any ideas for future sub goals, please leave them down below. And hey, if you made it this far, perhaps I've earned a little like and sub? For at least being somewhat entertaining. Hope you enjoyed the video. Ciao!